Sup? Here's some freaking news. Jared Kushner has gone missing. Oh wait, no, there he is. Getting security clearance restored despite not being remotely qualified for his position, f***ing up his paperwork multiple times consistently, being more than $1 billion in debt, being implicated in many crimes involving manipulating foreign policy to aid and enrich himself, and making $82 million with his wife while working at the White House. It seems like ever since his crime wife's wannabe side f*** got involved in all those crimes before calling attention to those crimes by becoming president and then doing a really bad job at hiding the crimes he did to the point that his lawyers have quit, the Kush has become a bit of a recluse. Undoubtedly because of all his own crimes that he doesn't want to go to jail for, like his father did when he also committed crimes. So what's a powerful criminal to do when they have all these crimes that they and their crime family might go to crime jail for? That is just perfect. Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and future jail beer-inner, is trying to make jails nicer. Because if you know your president/dad/romantic rival consistently serves up his crime helpers an endless menu of shit salads, you might as well try to sprinkle some artisanal cheese on there before you gobble it down. But let's be real. If Jared did a hard time, it would likely be at one of those ivory shiv facilities that Bernie Madoff went to. So could his interest in prison reform be out of the kindness of his heart and not the shit saladness of his tummy? Well, here's the weird part. It seems like everyone is DTF with some degree of prison reform lately. Jeff Sessions supported Obama's Fair Sentencing Act for cocaine and crack offenders. Multiple bipartisan bills have been proposed for sentencing reform in general. Even the Koch brothers seem to be gung-ho on making prisons a better place for rehabilitation. And now Jared Kushner and Trump, whose campaign was donated to by private prisons, is meeting with civil rights groups and Kim Kardashian to talk prison reform. What the f*** is happening? Who are the greedy jerks slowing the prison reform debate? Well, there's one point of contention in all of this that is very telling, and that is sentencing reform. As in reforming the amount of time offenders are sent to jail, or getting rid of mandatory minimums that have proven to be ineffective and disastrous. Despite bipartisan interest and 60 civil and human rights groups expressing that sentencing reform is crucial, the White House has stated that sentencing reform is not a way forward, pushed hard against anyone proposing it, and have actually risked any reform from passing thanks to this stance. Why is that, I wonder? Obviously, this is partially because of Jeff Sessions, a 600-year-old mythical hogboon who feeds off the tears of minorities. But even as Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions III made some concessions, the conversation has continued to move away from reducing the amount of people going through the system. So while Kushner and even the Koch brothers have spoken out against mandatory minimums, it's not a deal breaker even though it really should be. And here's why that is. Remember those private prisons who donated to the Trump campaign? Companies like CoreCivic, formerly the Corrections Corporation of America, who saw their stocks go up when Trump was elected? Well, it turns out that these companies are trying to be the ones also doing the prison reform, squeezing out community groups in favor of implementing complicated rehabilitation programs that trap ex-cons into a continued relationship with the criminal justice system. You know, the kind designed to make money. Not to mention that these private prisons are rock hard with their dicks for Trump's immigration stance, meaning that they get the good PR from being pro-reform while simply switching their business model to tormenting ICE detainees. But also, remember how Texas has paved the way for future prisons? That was partially thanks to Chuck DeVore of the Tea Party, who became the leader of a conservative think tank called the Texas Public Policy Foundation. The TPPF, or is a heavy advocate of laws put forward by another group called the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. They have defended ALEC and hosted summits with ALEC members as guest speakers. And ALEC is a big quote marks, non-profit conservative organization that serves as a liaison between the private sector and state legislators to collaborate on bills that better serve corporations over people. They are the subject of multiple documentaries about the prison industrial complex and are behind such terrible things as the Stand Your Ground law and climate change denial. Until recently, they have had a history of supporting longer sentencing thanks to their ties with private prisons. But as the current prison system has proven disastrous and unpopular, even ALEC has begun pushing bills for reform. And it's weird, right? Why would such a pro-business group suddenly care about prisoner rehabilitation? It might have something to do with a 2007 brief by the company suggesting releasing people early from prison with conditional release bonds, similar to bail bonds, effectively setting up bonding companies as private parole agencies. In other words, shifting the corporate interest from keeping people in jail to monitoring and extorting people who just got out of jail. We desperately need prison reform, which is why this is a nonpartisan issue and many liberal groups are willing to work with Kushner on this. It's why the president met with Kim Kardashian recently. But if we simply replace one exploitative system designed to profit corporations with an entirely different exploitative system designed to profit those same corporations, then... Speaking of prisons and dystopias and exploitation, President Donald Trump is a kind, compassionate, effective leader who did everything in his power to bring justice to Alice Johnson and commute her sentence after decades for a nonviolent first-time drug dealing offense, thanks to Kim Kardashian, who has campaigned for Alice for a long time and who can be seen here realizing in real time that Trump probably used her for political reasons.
Trump is using you as a political pawn, so now you're sort of, you've endorsed him in a way, you've kind of given him legitimacy. You might be in a campaign video, he used you.
I think Kanye's already given him legitimacy, so I don't, in that way. So I was working on this before, so I don't, I don't think I would be used, and at the end of the day.
Now, that's a pretty funny realization to watch, but it's also a real bummer because she has been working towards this for a long time, and it's good that this person is free. But also, yeah, Trump doesn't care about this and will use it to his advantage in the future. It's just a political win without actually doing anything to change what put Alice there in the first place. I'll cite Trumpist propagandist and Trump sycophant Charlie Kirk, currently the captain of Libertarian Campus Project Turning Point USA, a nonprofit funded by billionaires like the Koch brothers again, that definitely doesn't engage in political activity. And sorry, real quick, but breaking news, the president's nonprofit is being sued for illegal activity and letting the Trump campaign dictate who the charity donates to, despite a ban on political activity by nonprofits. Side note, the Trump administration has been trying to overturn the Johnson Amendment, which prohibits nonprofits from engaging in politics. This happened on his birthday. Happy birthday, Mr. President. And good luck with your crime stuff. But back to these people not caring about prison reform or criminal justice. Here's non-political activity engager Charlie Kirk, seen here on Fox News next to the president's sons, tweeting, "Trump courageously signs a pardon for Alice Johnson, an elderly woman over-sentenced for a non-violent drug charge and her first offense. Obama refused to do this, and Trump has stepped up to plate to right a wrong." And just a few corrections. Step up to the plate, Charlie. And also, let's not use the word courageously, because is it? And Charlie, you also got the word pardon wrong. Trump commuted her sentence. A pardon restores a person's civil rights that they lost after being convicted of their crime, like Trump courageously did for Joe Arpaio. A commutation reduces a person's sentence. One could argue the more courageous thing to do would be a full pardon. But whatever, it's still good. And the rest of your tweet is true. Obama didn't do it, and Alice did ask him, and he should have. But also, hey Charlie, do you remember saying, on his last day in office, Obama pardoned the sentences of 330 federal inmates convicted of drug crimes, releasing them back on the streets? Which brings us to a segment we like to call, You Don't Care. You should remember saying this, Charlie. I assume you're like the president and have one of the great memories of all time. Also, these tweets were 4 days apart, buddy. But it doesn't matter if you don't remember, because you also don't care. There's a reason you're happy about Alice Johnson, a drug criminal, being released back on the street. And you're mad about 330 unnamed drug criminals being released back on the street. You don't care. Trump doesn't care about criminal justice or prison reform. He pardoned Joe Arpaio, proud owner of tent cities, camps for prisoners, and proud proponent of bringing back the chain gang. He should be very proud. He should be very Joe Arpaio. Trump doesn't care about freeing a drug dealer from her imprisonment. He wants to execute drug dealers. He said it a few times, and he just generally wants to bring back the death penalty. He said that many times. So yes, he does get that campaign photo, and it is spectacular news for Alice Johnson. And it's a shame that it took a very famous and rich woman along with a man's desire for political points to accomplish it. But it's a shamier that the actual president doesn't actually care about this stuff. If he did, he probably wouldn't have turned a protest about police brutality and a history of killing people of color with impunity into a protest against the country and the flag and the troops and the hymn. Even though Kaepernick initially sat for the anthem, then started kneeling to show respect to the troops after discussing it with veteran Nate Boyer. But anyway, who cares? That person no longer works at the NFL, which has, here's some news, introduced new rules to the game. If you want to protest, don't leave the locker room during the national anthem, and if you get out on the field and kneel, you'll be fined. Now, a lot of people might view this as a free speech issue, but some might say, but news dude, this was a business decision. The NFL is a business. It can do whatever it wants if it's losing sales. It has nothing to do with the president who tweeted about the issue this many times, but did say on TV,
I think the people pushed it forward. This was not me.
But also, according to a deposition from Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, the president said, you can't win this one. This is a very winning, strong issue for me. Tell everybody, you can't win this one. This one lifts me. And then Jerry just f***ing told the other owners, and the following year they made a rule to silence the protesters. And since this rule, some people have shared an article from, well, Nazi times. And it's about, well, failed to give Nazi salute, German football club banned for 12 months. Now, I'm not one to look at our smartest and also bravest, but also healthiest president ever and call him a fascist. You know, I'm not one to see some Hitlerian kind of thing and go, wait, that's kind of what this president guy's doing. You know, because while fascism is a fluid, reactionary, and dictatorial movement against the left that goes through different stages and is something that historians still struggle to define, there are similarities. And one of the biggest ones is this chauvinistic ultranationalism. But we're fair and balanced TMCR at Cody's Shody, so let's actually look at the article. Apparently, the story is about a game that took place in France in 1934, and French players threatened to not play if the German team gave the Nazi salute. Rather than not play or look like Nazis and risk starting a riot, the German team decided to not look like Nazis, did not give the salute, and they played the game. Then Berlin banned them from playing games outside of Germany and all other German teams from playing in France. So, see, in one, the leader of a country punished an entire league for one team's single act of not displaying patriotism. And in the other, the leader of a country punished an entire league for exercising their First Amendment right, but the leader ignored the reason for the protest and presented it as several acts of not displaying patriotism. So, gotcha! Fake news. To further purposefully not get it, after hearing that some of the Philadelphia Eagles didn't want to meet him, President Trump uninvited them, saying they disagree with their president because he insists that they proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart, in honor of the great men and women of our military and the people of our country. See, it's not a free speech issue. The NFL made a business decision. The president merely, quote, insists that they proudly stand for the national anthem, hand on heart. Anyway, the Philadelphia Eagles, who did not kneel during the 2017 season, were uninvited from the event celebrating them. And the president said he was going to have his own party, and he was going to fuck the national anthem. And they were going to have all kinds of patriotic and also beautiful songs, which he loves. Which brings us to a segment we like to call It's Good, Actually, that the president made an enormous deal about patriotic songs and then knew he was going to be singing a specific one in front of a microphone, in front of the world, on television, and didn't take a single minute in the morning to read the lyrics literally once so that he could use his great memory of all time and sing the words accurately. Or, if you know you don't know it, just don't sing it at all. Don't sing at all, man. Anyway, speaking of flags and dictator stuff and that one Kim from earlier, Kim Jong-Un from now. Because here's some news. Extremely Supreme Leader Kim Jong-Un of our very free Democratic Republic of North Korea, in a glorious and expected move from such a powerful and invulnerable man, has claimed victory by getting the US president to salute one of our magnificent generals and ensuring that the evil United States will stop doing its war drills with South Korea in exchange for signing something that refers to denuclearization with even vaguer language than previous agreements, which our holy dear leader also did not honor, which actually seems fine considering the president of the evil United States just pulled out of a previous nuclear deal with Iran, so who gives a shit who signs what these days, as long as it's also signed by our unparalleled and very stable, brilliant leader who's also the smartest and healthiest of all people with the greatest memory of all time, Kim Jong-Un. Sorry. Here's some news. President Trump, a real piece of shit whom I hate, met with dictator Kim Jong-un for peace talks in Singapore, which is not a bad thing. Peace, I'm told, is good. I am skeptical of his ability to succeed and his desire for success, but as liberals complain about legitimizing a brutal dictator after supporting the idea of Obama meeting with that same brutal dictator, conservatives praise Trump for meeting with the brutal dictator after years of attacking Obama for suggesting he meet with the brutal dictator. And while the idea of peace is certainly, I'm still told, quite good, President Trump sure did praise the brutal dictator a lot, like just showering him with compliments. And perhaps the president does know that Kim Jong-un is a brutal dictator and is a bit scared of him, or envious, or definitely both. He does compliment all dictators. But anyway, he basically did whatever with very unclear commitment and terms, and seriously, Trump, like, fucking loved this guy. And again, I'm not going to argue with the United States engaging in fewer war games or with peace talks. South Korea seems very hopeful about this whole situation. It's potentially good. But also, Trump didn't bring up any of Kim's human rights violations, of which there are many. Or, as Charlie Kirk would put it if Trump were black, Obama visits Cuba, and I haven't heard him mention anything about the political prisoners they hold and the death squads they use. Unreal. Right on, Charlie. Upon returning from his trip, Trump explained that while he was campaigning, thousands of people went up to him asking for him to bring back the remains of their children who were in the Korean War, making those thousands of people 100 years old, at least, each. But the president was also asked about his compliments of the dictator and his lack of bringing up the human rights stuff. And the president said, well, you know, he's a tough guy, and a lot of people have done bad things. And you know how when, like, a kind of fucked up dictator thing happens and Trump normalizes behavior and concepts of what leaders are capable of, what they're supposed to do, what kind of leaders are good, actually, and you're like, well, it's pretty obvious how fucked up this is to a rational and honest person, but you know, so many people in the country will try to explain it away or justify his justification, or basically just say, well, yeah, dictators are good if you think about it, and you don't know if it's even worth unpacking and trying to explain why it's bad, because you know those people aren't in the market of being convinced anyway, and you just want to say, this is obviously bad, Trump's a bad person and a dangerous leader, you fucking morons. Well, this segment has been called that, I guess. And to close it out, after his trip, the president said he just landed. A long trip, but everybody can now feel much safer than the day I took office. There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. And then God was like, you know what would be funny? and sent us a tweet from the past reading, "The reason great deal makers do not openly celebrate a deal, especially one that is not complete, is that it shows weakness to the other side." And I guess, speaking of prisoners and just kind of like more dictator stuff, here's some news. The president has instituted a policy of separating kids from their parents at the border. And this was at first presented as a necessary deterrent for illegal immigrants who are coming to the border to steal our jobs and sell drugs to whomever and rape whomever else. And even ignoring Trump's long history of scapegoating and generalizing and dehumanizing immigrants and criminals aside, the separated families are actually people coming to America seeking asylum legally. But no matter who they are, perhaps separating children from their parents indefinitely is a bad policy. Taking a child from its mother while breastfeeding, telling parents they're just giving the kids a bath and then never bringing them back, sometimes bringing the wrong kids back, treating them perhaps a bit like animals. Now, we here on Cody's Shody have already discussed how maybe calling immigrant criminals animals is dehumanizing and can easily shift to mean any immigrant or non-white American citizen, and how the president will often talk about illegal job stealing and people raping immigration when he really means migrants seeking asylum, which is legal, and how he'll accuse migrant caravans of being full of rapists when in reality they're fleeing rapists. But don't worry, because something? Probably? Anyway, having gotten whiff of people knowing that many of these people are legally seeking asylum, Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III announced that escaping domestic violence and gang violence will no longer be acceptable reasons to seek asylum. So, problem solved! Speaking of language and how it's manipulated for the subjugation and imprisonment of vulnerable people, here's the president talking about migrant children.
They look so innocent. They're not innocent.
And sure, that sounds f***ed up, but the media is probably misrepresenting him. He was probably talking about MS-13 specifically.
But they exploited the loopholes in our laws to enter the country as unaccompanied alien minors. They look so innocent. They're not innocent.
Okay, so maybe he didn't specify, but to be fair, elsewhere in the event, MS-13 was mentioned. But to be balanced, what the f***, Mr. President? Speaking of unaccompanied minors, when children are torn from their parents who are legally seeking asylum, the children who are not unaccompanied minors are reclassified as unaccompanied minors and moved to let's call it a holding facility. So the Trump administration is actively and willingly creating more unaccompanied minors. So many that they're considering building a tent city to store them all, like a camp, like a fun in the Sun Nation camp, a fun Sun Nation camp. I hope he gets help from Joe Arpaio, who, made tent cities for prisoners, and I hope some real good bastards are making money off of incarcerating these children. And I hope my sarcasm is obvious. At the entrance of one of the centers holding these children who aren't criminals and who were taken from their parents who are legally seeking asylum is a fun little mural of the guy doing it to them. It reads, "Sometimes losing a battle, you find a new way to win the war." And that's cool, that's uplifting. Thank you, President you. Love to see my president's smiling face at the camp he's forcing me to be in that I'm not allowed to leave. Also, that facility is called Casa Padre, Father House, which is a cool name to give a facility for kids who've been taken from their parents. A+. Also, in order to get meals, their barcodes are scanned. When confronted about this policy that the president and his administration are on record proposing and announcing, Trump said it's not his fault, a lie. It's Democrat legislation, a lie. And they're the ones doing it, a lie. And it's their fault, a lie. And so here's some news. What a fucking lie, you goddamn motherfucking liar. Now, to be fair and balanced, and TM, and C, and R, holding children in these facilities is not a Trump-specific policy. Here's an article from the Obama era about migrant children staying in ice boxes, freezing cold rooms crammed with migrants, with fluorescent lights on 24/7. One tells the story of a 7-year-old's only family member taken away, leaving the 7-year-old alone in the icebox. So everyone's saying, this is not America. We don't do this. We don't just lock people up or put groups in camps or turn away refugees or engage in genocide. Just like Google America? But separating kids from their parents is new. Being overloaded with kids is new. The president suggesting a Joe Arpaio-inspired tent city, which reportedly will not be required to have trained staff, is new. And people profiting off this ghoulery isn't new. But what is new is the Keep Families Together Act, a bill from Dianne Feinstein that would prohibit this separation of parents and children. So here's the congressional switchboard number. Call your representative and tell them to support it, like maybe Republican senators who say, Trump, do you have no decency, sir, yet vote with him every step of the way. Or like Democratic senators who should know what an easy decision this is, despite only 40 of them being on board as of this filming. And this turned into quite the bummer. So here is the president, President Trump, singing God Bless America. Except it's not the fake news version you've been seeing about how President Trump says he cares so much about patriotic music, but when he knows he's going to be in front of a microphone on live television, he doesn't take literally a couple of minutes to read the lyrics so he can use his great memory of all time to at least make it appear like he knows it. Because the president does know the words to God Bless America. And if you think he doesn't, you're a fucking traitor, and I hope you die! Roll it! I'm so mad! And God bless you. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy our show, please support us on Patreon and check out our podcast, Even More News. Also like, subscribe, and comment, and do all the things that YouTube allows you to do that you already know about, because it's not your first day on YouTube. You're an adult or a child, I don't know, our audience.